So, just for the record, we are the Hill News senior editorial staff speaking with President Fox this afternoon. It is March 31st, 2020. And I guess just to start off, how are you doing? What does your daily routine kind of look like in these crazy, weird times when you're on this empty campus, social distancing, but making all these hard decisions?
Well, none of it's the same, and I think as we all are trying to find ourselves in a routine, so we have a rhythm to the day, because it's very disruptive to be working on screen and not having a chance to be face to face. My own routine looks not too different from when we're all on campus. I try to get exercise every morning. I have meetings. I work through correspondence, and try to get a little break later in the day, and then finish up by dinner time with a few things in the evening. But it's a campus that's a little like the old episodes of Twilight Zone, where there's this beautiful place, and it uh, is vacant for the most part. We really are keeping our distance here. My biggest concern in the course of every day is how are the students on campus doing? Most of them are international, a long way from home, and they are really doing, I think, extremely well, supporting each other, and I think feeling the support of staff and CAs, with lots of daily contact, albeit with appropriate uh, distance.
And for the students who are on campus, are they all in their original rooms, or did they have to move to like a central location for logistics sake, or what's the situation there?
I I think as we do for breaks, um, we people who are staying on campus typically move into a one wing of, say, Sykes, and so we're pretty much able to do that with the current population on campus. The senior townhouses are not occupied, so it's pretty much in one place, but spread out enough to be safe.
Great. And so who were you working with specifically, when you were making the big decisions, to move students off campus, to commit to remote learning for the rest of the semester? Do you have like a specific committee for that? And kind of what does the process look like there?
Sure. So it's a very well integrated operation, perhaps not visible to students because it's really behind the scenes. But we have an emergency planning team that always meets throughout the year, and then can be activated for special circumstances like what we've just been facing in the last few weeks. The senior staff has 11 participants, including me. These would be vice presidents and chief officers in all the areas of campus life, starting with the academic program, our dean, dean of students, chief facilities officer, athletic director, chief financial officer. Um, um, let's see who's go around the table. Head of employee relations, chief advancement of course admissions, our dean of admissions, Florence Hines. So it's a very experienced team. We work together now for a long time. We have one new member, Haji Bradley, who has fit in like he's worked with us for 10 years. So it's a team that really has tremendous experience and trust. And so the larger group, the emergency planning team, has about 30 people. So all the directors in student life, res life, activities, the directors in the academic affairs area, associate deans, our associate dean of international studies, for instance, is on that team. So it involves dining services, and they divide into working groups, 5 or 6 special topics that coordinate the questions and begin to make recommendations that require action with a timeline. So the sequencing of all that we've been doing is really important to try to get right. And when you're operating at a pretty rapid pace, you just have to accept that some of it's not going to be perfect, and we adjust as we go along and keep trying to rub pure the glow of very, very tough decisions.
Yeah, so you talk about timeline a little bit. Could you just talk a little bit more about your decision, timeline-wise, to the initial decision to send students home and then revisit in April, and then later decide to commit to remote learning for the rest of the semester? I know some schools made the call to just, end the semester on campus right away, versus making the decision later. Could you kind of walk us through your thought process there?
Sure. So in the early moments of the outbreak around the world, and in paying attention to the public health specialists, we knew we didn't have much time to decide and how to get this in a way that would settle student questions just before the break. We kind of split the baby initially. Say, okay, let's go 3 weeks to remote learning, and then decide once we see what the spread of this looks like. We were following others in higher education very closely to see how they were handling it. And the university presidents around the United States really were the first leaders to step up and recognize the seriousness of this danger. And I think everybody's circumstances are a little different. We're in a rural community, and there's a lag factor in how things reach us in Canton. So we have the advantage of a little time on our side, which we decided to take and see if we couldn't come back to a normal semester in mid-April. Within a week or so, we realized that was looking less and less likely. And in particularly New York State, with the governor's actions, and the local schools here, which have been closed now for a couple of weeks and will likely remain closed until the 20th of April at least. Once that happened, we had to just say, okay, the rest of the semester is going to be remote. And there are other things to pay attention to, as far as the athletic spring schedule. That had kind of a domino scenario. Once the NBA canceled, the NHL, Major League Baseball, NCAA March Madness, we also had to pull the wire on all our athletic activities, whether they're on campus or not. So there was some long, hard thought about this, trying to, order all the information in a sequence that gave us some logic based on data, reality, and probability. And in this moment, we're still dealing with probabilities, and thinking about not just next week, but the next several months.
Right. Right. And so kind of on that same note, as far as, I'm sure obviously there's so much out of all of our hands right now, but I was wondering if maybe you had some sort of vague timeline or ideas to how the process is going to work for us retrieving our belongings that are still left on campus, or if it's really kind of up to the state mandate level.
Yeah, that's a question that we are wrestling with every day among 15 or 20 other questions. I know that's important for students to settle in their minds. Right now, we are under a state directive that forbids any access to campus. The staff who can are working remotely, faculty. So we are having to follow right now the governor's direction, and then it's if the day comes when we get the green light, we've thought about how do we allow students or families to retrieve belongings. Right now, we're not even allowed to pack and ship, if that were even an option. But that might be an option down the road for students who can't get back. I mean, we've really tried out all kinds of scenarios. The main thing is that your personal belongings are secure, safeguarded. Some heartwarming stories of students who need fish to be fed. We're taking care of that. A student whose laptop crashed and had a backup in his room. Well, we shipped that one home. So we're doing our best to just live with this patiently. And as soon as we have a clear idea of what a good plan looks like, we're going to be able to communicate that and support that next move.
Great. So kind of again, looking down the road, I know, the three of us here are all seniors, and I know there's a lot of talk, especially on our 2020 Facebook page, about plans for commencement and kind of what's in the works for that. I know that there's a graduation committee being put together, or I'm sure that's always been put together a year, but I'm sure they're working extra time right now. Could you illuminate a little bit on who's on the committee, if they've met yet, kind of if you've heard of any plans so far?
Sure. Well, the Commencement Planning Committee is a standing group. Lisa Kenya has been doing it for years as the convener. So we have 10, 12 people who are always involved in that, from the registrar to the facilities team. It's quite a show to put on, and it's got a certain precision to it and a rhythm, and we're really good at it. So it's not something we can just assume can happen without a lot of analysis and just figuring out logistics. So let me just say a couple things about where we are with the commencement question. The university fully intends to gather the class for a full cap and gown commencement, live in person here in Canton. The thought of doing something that is virtual, was always meant to be complementary, not meant to replace the good effect and celebration of a commencement in some scaled version. So it's like so often in the course catalog, when you register for a class, it's TBD right now. And for me, the sooner the better, for all of you. But again, here are the probabilities. The International Olympic Games aren't going to happen in July. That sort of suggests that not much is going to happen in the early mid parts of summer anywhere. So we've got to think about calendar, and then with managing commencement, uh, to bring that number of people back safely, it requires that the local public health people sign off on it, that the state government is good with it. So I don't know how long it's going to be before we actually can say here's the plan, or here's the plan with plan B and C as alternative options. But look, we want you back here. Your faculty wants you back here, not under these circumstances, but it's important that we, have that moment where each student walks across the stage and gets a St. Lawrence degree from me, and here's the applause of your classmates, and just feels that wonderful vibe. So it's the top of mind, and I think it is for most of our peer colleges right now too. Although some have already precluded the idea of anything in person and just totally canceled. We're committed to have something that's on campus for the class of 2020. I just can't tell you when, because nobody knows that yet.
It's great to hear that we'll still be able to come back and have that moment, though. So regardless of when it is, I'm excited for it. So
yeah, there are equivalent times in St. Lawrence history where classes have had their momentum and continuity disrupted, because of war, because of, disease 100 years ago. But you will stand apart from your decade. I feel fairly confident that this will be different, and it will, mark the class in a way that I think will bring out the best in people. And it'll be even more important and more special to you when we have that chance to be together.
Great. I know a lot of students also are wondering if that moment when we do get to come back to campus, will it just be a commencement ceremony with us walking across the stage, or if there will be any other kind of programming involved. I know a lot of people are looking forward to senior week, and I know that's really logistically tough to schedule any other time than it was originally scheduled. But is there any details on that at this point?
I think that's still premature. I don't know if it's possible to imagine a full week. It's a little different when you're already here and the other classes have already dispersed for the summer. But we know that's part of the tradition, and making some allowance for social time and one more quad experience. All of that is part of the package. But I can't say how that might be managed just yet. But it is definitely under consideration.
I just wanted to sort of come back a little bit to the point, or the idea of the sort of live stream as a complement to what would be an in-person, or the planned in-person sort of commencement anyways. If the plan is to still have that, like, sort of what would be a regular in-person commencement, what does the live stream look like in sort of the planning committee's mind?
So I guess there's a distinction to make here. We'd seen some other colleges describe their commencement as virtual only, like a Zoom commencement, where, I don't know how this would look with 600 of your faces and mine and the board chairs present your degrees, and with Zoom speeches. That would be, to me, the idea of a virtual commencement where we're doing it remotely. We've always live streamed commencement, at least for the last 7 or 8 years, so that if you have a family member who can't be on campus with you, they, through the St. Lawrence website, could watch the ceremony and hear the student speeches, and hear the bagpipes from Brockville, Ontario. And they, by the way, we're going to be the North Country Citation honorees this year. They've been playing for commencement to St. Lawrence for about, I don't know, 25, 30 years. You know, it's just part of the tradition. So I think the idea of a virtual commencement did not get a lot of support from what I can tell. So, you know, and that was in the immediacy of the moment when a lot of our peer schools were offering that. And we were trying to do both that and then come back to campus for something else, either a commencement ceremony or some other kind of reunion. But I think the better way to think of this is the intention here is that we would replace the May commencement with another date. And there still is a lot of what if hanging around that, but that's what we want to do. And that event would be available by live stream. So if, you know, it may not work for all your classmates to come back on that date, but we'd have some way to include them and their families. So it's still, you know, a working draft, but it's you know, important to, I think, know the desire and the hopes, and I, you know, believe we might have something to announce in the next few weeks, not sooner.
James, did you want to?
I can follow up, sure, with
Yeah.
the other one.
Sure.
In the email you sent out with the sort of like the ultimate decision to switch to remote learning, one of the things that came up, or at least came from the office, one of the things that was brought up was that looking at the sort of room and board situation and what that might look like, how that's obviously a different situation for every student and all these sort of things that have to go into that. But I was wondering if you could just shine a light a little more, like what that process might look like, if you know, like how, like what that sort of is going to be like, and if there's any timeline for that as well, because I know that's a sort of concern that's pressing for a lot of students.
Sure. We made a commitment to do reimbursements on room and board charges for all students. What is not yet fully understood is what the variance among students means. So each individual student has, you know, because of financial aid, a differential factor, a price that would be different. So to do what's fair and consistent, because you know, if we did something just across the board, it would not. Some people would I think feel you know, shortchanged in some way, and so we really need to have the time at the end of the semester to look at that. You know, the formula will be prorated. For seniors, it would probably be a, you know, some a cash allowance disbursement. For returning students, probably a credit towards next year's term bill. That's what I think most places are going to be doing, and that, I think that makes sense. So that's where we are. I you know, wish I could give a simple, tight answer, but it's not a simple equation to solve. But we've got the finance office, the student billing office, working on that, coordinating with, you know, financial aid and a few other players. So more on that, but it's another new project for us that we're working on.
Another question I know has been on some students' minds that I've been talking to is what is being done about dining staff and facility staff and other staff workers on campus who can't work remotely, or now that there's no one on campus, there's nothing to be done. Um,
Yeah, that's another one of those excruciating hard problems for us. This is a very tight-knit community. We employ a little over 800 people. The local economy depends on our force multiplier in the economy. So we have a corporate responsibility, a civic duty to try to protect all our workers from hardship. They've got families, they've got bills. So the governor's directive has allowed us only essential workers to be on staff. And we had to wait several days to get an interpretation on just what that could mean. And where we have students to take care of, we have to have dining facilities operating. We have to have oversight on the residence halls. We have to have IT staff available as part of the critical infrastructure of remote learning. But it took a few days to get that interpretation developed so that higher education in New York State got some exemption. But those staff members who cannot work remotely, whose jobs can only be done in person, who are not designated essential, have been temporarily furloughed. And we have worked with the three unions very closely on our plan going forwd. We've relaxed all the ways you can define and use leave. And so that will continue people at their full or close to full wage. New York State has also reduced to about no time the wait for unemployment insurance. And probably most importantly, St. Lawrence made sure that healthcare coverage would continue and not be interrupted for our staff members and families. So it's a temporary moment. People understand it. We're a good place to work, and we want to make sure that our staff members not only feel loyal to St. Lawrence, which they do, but that we're doing our best to comply with the current directive and run the institution on a scale that is appropriate.
Okay, so one last question, at least I have on my mind, is just I've heard from a couple students, and I haven't been able to fully corroborate, but I'd like if you could shed some light on this, that after following the March 10th email to decide to send students home, for a temporary time, some students replied directly to that email and received an out of office notice back. And I was wondering if you could kind of just illuminate what that was there, if you were on campus or not.
Out of office for me? Not for me. I'm only during my family summer vacation do I ever have an out of office message. So I don't know how that would be possible.
Okay.
We try to, whether it's email that comes to me directly or to the office, we try to acknowledge and respond to everyone's message, and always express appreciation for perspective, even one that might be at odds with university decisions and policy. We just need to make sure people feel heard, and I hope they have. I've received hundreds of emails from students, staff, alumni since that notice went out, and then a subsequent letter that I wrote. I think maybe the dates all blur. It's it's just every day has its own form of being disoriented on the calendar. But I felt a lot of support about our plans, even from those who might not like the situation and might disagree with it. But I'm always open to better ideas, and I'm trying to make sure we collect the best wisdom possible as we move forward. But yeah, so it would be nice if you could dispel that idea that there's a out of office reply that just is a robo response. That's not what is our protocol.
Yeah, I just heard a couple rumors, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to set the record straight.
No, well, I tell you what I'm going to be doing fairly soon. I'm going to have open office hours like I do on campus with Zoom. And I want to hear from students. I miss that part of my life terribly. And we're looking for other ways to stay connected. And I want to listen. I want to see how people are doing. This is highly stressful for all of us. And I've got the advantage of having been through a few things in life, and you guys you're just getting to the starting line, and it makes it even more stressful, I think. And so we're going to try to find ways so I can continue to stay in touch. Email is not my favorite way of communication. This is much better to see your faces and hear your voices. And so we're going to try to, leverage our technology in a way that approximates, the strength of our community.
Great.
Did we lose James?
Yeah, he did say he had to
maybe
leave early, but
I think he said his computer froze up a little bit. So
yeah, we've all had a few of those.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right.
So,
well,
sorry.
It happens.
Well, I'm trying to get anything else that I should say. You may not have any more questions, but happy to be available for any more conversation. And if there's certain specific things that need attention, I can connect you with the people who might have greater expertise than mine. But we've got an amazing team. All the divisional staffs have been going flat out, working long hours, and showing a lot of teamwork. Our health center, our counseling staff, they're there trying to respond to student needs, academic support, certainly working full time. So we're making the best of just a horrific situation. I don't want to use the word too often because it then becomes a hollow cliche, but it really is unprecedented, at least in the last century. And this came on us with just an astonishing ferocity, so fast, and it continues to move very fast. We have about 25 cases in St. Lawrence County of people testing positive. At least one St. Lawrence staff member is among that number. 5 students at SUNY Potsdam, at least one staff member at Clarkson. So we're not absent from the world in Canton. It's here, and nobody can outrun this. It's just the way it's going to be for a while.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a couple questions before
Yeah,
we.
absolutely.
How are your classes? What can you tell me about your own ability to function? You probably both working on other projects besides the Hill News, and now it's a whole different ballgame for you.
Yeah, I mean, we're both English majors and we're both doing honors projects in the English department. So just trying to stay motivated to finish the project by April 15th and, getting deadlines in. It's hard because you don't get the same expected interaction with your professors and your peers as you would normally, especially since not every class can happen at the same scheduled time because we have students from all over not even the country but the world, so it's hard to coordinate that, but getting through it. So.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with all of my professors and how flexible they've been able to be and working with students' individual needs to work with them to get as much as we can done. Maybe flexibility with expectations too, just because so many students have a lot of different things that they have to deal with now that they're home with their family or otherwise. So that's been really great. I've been surprised by some of my classes, how seamlessly they've been able to just like translate to Zoom. I thought it would be really weird, but it kind of has worked a lot better than I expected. It is weird to be spending this much time in my childhood bedroom all the time.
Yeah,
but
I'm at home too. Yeah, we're getting adjusted, and it's I guess it's the next norm for a while.
mm-hmm.
So keep me posted on those honors projects. That's another thing that we're going to miss this year is Moving Up Day. Our way to celebrate your achievements. I'm hoping, maybe to James's earlier question, that maybe departments would do some maybe virtual gathering to celebrate the senior majors in the departments. That's an idea that's out there. I don't know how it will take shape, but you all deserve that at a minimum, and I just wish we had had the days back where we could have those kinds of celebrations that are part of the rhythms of the place.
Yeah.
I know certain, we're both in ODK as well, so I know that ODK is still planning on doing some sort of Zoom induction, which
Good.
won't quite be the same. Not to give any spoilers to
we can't
inductees, but
yeah, nothing like that jog around the triangle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know if departments are still planning on giving awards even though we won't have Moving Up Day?
I have to assume they are. I've not heard. I've got a senior staff meeting coming up next, and I'll ask the dean that question. I've got to assume they would be able to do that. I mean, they're having department meetings by Zoom. We had faculty council by Zoom last week. We'll do that again this week. So yeah, I've got to think those things are still possible.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's great to visit. Keep in touch. Good luck with getting this paper out online on time.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing it.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you so much for meeting with us today.
Well, keep in touch, and I mean it. If you want to talk again, we can figure it out.
Okay. Thank you.
Great.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Marissa. Thanks,
Take
Dale.
care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dale.
Bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.